The chair recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker pro tempore. I notice a little bit more of a smile on your face today than we have in the past. Mr. Speaker, I rise today at the direction of the Democratic Caucus to place into nomination for the position of Speaker of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries from New York. Mr. Speaker, you may agree with this, but we are back here 22 days into this Republican-manufactured chaos, and House Republicans have brought us to the exact same position that we were back then. All of the infighting, all of the disarray, just to end up where we were 3 weeks ago. These past few weeks, we have been left wondering if Republicans were truly intent on solving our issues, reopening the House of Representatives, and rallying around someone to lead this chamber. Or has this been about something else? Has this been about a focus of House Republicans to find the person who can pass their extreme litmus test to oppose marriage equality, enact a nationwide abortion ban, and support overturning a free and fair election? It's a fair question. It's a fair question. No one. Nowhere in that candidate questionnaire is it about growing the middle class, helping our communities, keeping the cost of health care lower, and making life for everyday Americans better. The gentlewoman from New York said it right. This has been about one thing. This has been about who can appease Donald Trump. House Republicans have put their names behind someone who has been called the most important architect of the Electoral College objections. He's spearheaded, that's fair, we know how you feel. Yeah, you've made that clear. He's spearheaded the legal effort, joined by more than 100 of our colleagues on the other side of the aisle, in support of a dangerous and baseless lawsuit to overturn the results of the 2020 election. On the eve of January 6th, some of my Republican colleagues even called this a failed strategy. Yet those same individuals plan to stand right next to him today. Mr. Speaker Pro Tem, House Democrats believe that when members of this body voted to reject the results of the 2020 election, they forfeited their ability to lead this chamber. On this side of the aisle, we know what leadership looks like. Hakeem Jeffries has never turned his back on the will of the American people. The son of two social workers, he has always stood by the side of working families. The most pressing needs of everyday Americans are his North Star. He believes that everyone in America should have the opportunity to get ahead and achieve their version of the American dream. He believes that access to affordable health care is a right, not a privilege. He believes that reproductive freedom must be guaranteed, not stripped away. He believes that working families, not the wealthy and the well-connected, should be rewarded. He believes in growing the middle class so that everyone can succeed. He believes that our schools and our communities should be safe and free from gun violence. He believes that investing in public schools, not depriving students of fact-based education by banning books. He believes in taking care of our seniors and our veterans, not slashing their benefits. He believes in living up to the promise that America is a beacon of hope and a land of opportunity. He believes in defending democracy against all enemies and adversaries, foreign and domestic. He believes in standing by our allies, Israel and Ukraine. And he believes in keeping our government running and open. Let me be clear. This is not just a belief system. Leader Jeffries has the track record to back it up. He is certainly a far contrast from who Republicans have nominated, with or without their votes, to nominate today. But if House Republicans choose, they can still join us on a bipartisan path forward. Let's come together to fund our government, support our allies abroad, and deliver for working families. End the chaos, end the dysfunction, end the extremism. Let's open up the people's house. I yield back, Mr. Speaker.
The reading clerk will now call the roll.
Adams. Jeffries. Adderholt. Johnson. Aguilar. Jeffries. Alford.
Servant Leader, Honorable Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Allen.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Allred. Jeffries. Amadei.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Armstrong. Johnson. Arrington.
Mike
Johnson.
Johnson.
Auchincloss. Jeffries. Babin.
Mike Johnson, Louisiana.
Johnson. Bacon.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Baird.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Balderson. Johnson. Ballant. Jeffries. Banks.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Barr.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Berrigan. Jeffries. Bean of Florida.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Beatty. Jeffries. Bentz. Johnson. Barra. Jeffries. Bergman. Johnson. Beyer. Beyer. Bice. Johnson. Biggs. Johnson. Bilirakis.
Absolutely, Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Bishop of Georgia.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Bishop of North Carolina.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Blumenauer. Jeffries. Blunt Rochester. Jeffries. Boebert.
The Humble, the Honorable Mike
Johnson.
Johnson.
Bonamici.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Bost. Johnson. Bowman. Jeffries. Boyle of Pennsylvania. Boyle of Pennsylvania. Burkeen. Johnson. Brown.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Brownlee. Jeffries. Buchanan.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Buck. Johnson. Bouchon. Johnson. Bazinski. Jeffries. Burchett. Johnson. Burgess. Johnson. Burleson. Johnson. Bush. Jeffries. Calvert. Johnson. Kamek. Johnson. Caraveo. Jeffries. Carbajal. Jeffries. Cardenas. Jeffries. Carey. Johnson. Carl. Johnson. Carson. Jeffries. Carter of Georgia. Johnson. Carter of Louisiana. Jeffries. Carter of Texas. Johnson. Cartwright. Jeffries. Kassar. Jeffries. Case. Jeffries. Caston. Jeffries. Castor of Florida. Jeffries. Castro of Texas. Jeffries. Chavez de Reamer. Johnson. Sherfilis McCormick. Jeffries. Chu. Jeffries. Siscomani. Johnson. Clark of Massachusetts. Jeffries. Clark of New York. Jeffries. Cleaver. Jeffries. Klein. Johnson. Cloud. Johnson. Clyburn. Jeffries. Clyde. Johnson. Cohen. Jeffries. Cole. Johnson. Collins. Johnson. Comer. Johnson. Connolly. Jeffries. Correa. Correa. Costa. Jeffries. Courtney. Jeffries. Craig.
Happy wedding anniversary to my wife, Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Crane. Johnson. Crawford. Johnson. Crenshaw. Johnson. Crockett. Jeffries. Crow. Jeffries. Cuellar. Jeffries. Curtis. Johnson. Davis of Kansas. Jeffries. Davidson. Johnson. Davis of Illinois. Jeffries. Davis of North Carolina. Jeffries. Dean of Pennsylvania. Jeffries. DeGette. Jeffries. Dela Cruz. Johnson. DeLauro. Jeffries. Del Bene. Jeffries. DeLuzio. Jeffries. DeSaulnier. Jeffries. Desjardins. Johnson. D'Esposito. Johnson. Diaz-Balart. Johnson. Dingle. Jeffries. Doggett. Jeffries. Donalds. Johnson. Duarte. Johnson. Duncan. Johnson. Dunn of Florida. Johnson. Edwards. Johnson. Elsie. Johnson. Emmer. Johnson. Escobar. Jeffries. Eshoo. Jeffries. Espaillat. Jeffries. Estes. Johnson. Evans. Jeffries. Ezell. Johnson. Fallon.
Fourth District of Texas proudly and enthusiastically vote for Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Finstra. Johnson. Ferguson. Johnson. Finstad. Johnson. Fishbach. Johnson. Fitzgerald. Johnson. Fitzpatrick. Johnson. Fleischman. Johnson. Fletcher. Jeffries. Flood. Johnson. Foster. Jeffries. Fushi. Jeffries. Fox. Johnson. Lois Frankel. Jeffries. Scott Franklin. Johnson. Frost. Jeffries. Fry. Johnson. Fulcher. Johnson. Gates. Johnson. Gallagher. Johnson. Gallego. Gallego. Garamendi. Jeffries. Garbarino. Johnson. Mike Garcia. Johnson. Robert Garcia. Jeffries. Garcia of Illinois. Jeffries. Garcia of Texas. Jeffries. Jimenez. Johnson. Golden of Maine. Jeffries. Goldman of New York. Jeffries. Gomez. Jeffries. Tony Gonzalez. Johnson. Vicente Gonzalez. Vicente Gonzalez. Good of Virginia. Johnson. Gooden of Texas. Johnson. Gosar. Johnson. Gottheimer. Jeffries. Granger. Johnson. Graves of Louisiana. Johnson. Graves of Missouri. Johnson. Green of Tennessee. Johnson. Green of Texas. Jeffries. Green of Georgia. Johnson. Griffith. Johnson. Grijalva. Jeffries. Grothman. Johnson. Guest. Johnson. Guthrie. Johnson. Hageman. Johnson. Harder of California. Jeffries. Harris. Johnson. Harsbarger. Johnson. Hayes. Jeffries. Hearn. Johnson. Higgins of Louisiana. Johnson. Higgins of New York. Jeffries. Hill. Johnson. Himes. Jeffries. Henson. Johnson. Horsford. Jeffries. Houchin. Johnson. Houlihan. Jeffries. Hoyer. Jeffries. Hoyle of Oregon. Jeffries. Hudson. Johnson. Huffman. Jeffries. Huizinga. Johnson. Hunt. Johnson. Isa. Johnson. Ivy. Jeffries. Jackson of Illinois. Jeffries. Jackson of North Carolina. Jeffries. Jackson of Texas. Johnson. Jackson Lee.
The distinguished gentleman, Hakeem Jeffrey.
Jeffries. Jacobs. Jeffries. James. Johnson. Jayapal. Jeffries. 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 Johnson of Georgia.
Standing for reproductive freedom for women, I cast my vote for Hakeem Jeffrey.
Jeffries. Johnson of Louisiana. Johnson. Johnson of Ohio. Johnson. Johnson of South Dakota. Johnson. Jordan. Johnson. Joyce of Ohio. Joyce of Ohio. Johnson. Joyce of Pennsylvania. Johnson. Camlogger Dove. Jeffries. Captor. Jeffries. Kane of New Jersey. Johnson. Keating. Jeffries. Kelly of Illinois. Jeffries. Kelly of Mississippi. Johnson. Kelly of Pennsylvania. Johnson. Khanna. Jeffries. Kiggins of Virginia. Johnson. Kildee. Jeffries. Kiley. Johnson. Kilmer. Jeffries. Kim of California. Johnson. Kim of New Jersey. Jeffries. Krishnamurthy. Jeffries. Custer. Jeffries. Kustoff. Johnson. LaHood. Johnson. LaLota. Johnson. LaMalfa. Johnson. Lamborn. Johnson. Landsman. Landsman. Jeffries. Langworthy. Johnson. Larson of Washington. Jeffries. Larson of Connecticut. Jeffries. Latta. Johnson. LaTurner. Johnson. Lawler. Johnson. Lee of California. Jeffries. Lee of Florida. Johnson. Lee of Nevada. Jeffries. Lee of Pennsylvania. Jeffries. Ledger Fernandez. Jeffries. Lesko. Johnson. Letlow. Johnson. Levin. Jeffries. Liu. Jeffries. Lofgren. Jeffries. Loudermilk.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Lucas. Johnson. Luke Kameyer. Johnson. Luna. Johnson. Luttrell. Johnson. Lynch. Jeffries. Mace. Johnson. Magaziner. Jeffries. Maliotakis. Johnson. Mann. Johnson. Manning. Jeffries. Massey. Johnson. Mast. Johnson. Matsui. Jeffries. McBath. Jeffries. McCarthy. Johnson. McCall. Johnson. McLean. Johnson. McClellan. Jeffries. McClintock. Johnson. McCullum. Jeffries. McCormick. Johnson. McGarvey. Jeffries. McGovern. Jeffries. McHenry. Johnson. Meeks. Jeffries. Menendez. Jeffries. Ming. Jeffries. Muser. Johnson. Mfume. Jeffries. Miller of Illinois. Johnson. Miller of Ohio. Johnson. Miller of West Virginia. Johnson. Miller Meeks. Johnson. Mills.
For the Republic, Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Molinaro.
Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Molinar. Johnson. Mooney. Johnson. Moore of Alabama. Johnson. Moore of Utah. Johnson. Moore of Wisconsin. Jeffries. Moran. Johnson. Morelli. Jeffries. Moskowitz. Jeffries. Moulton. Jeffries. Mervan. Jeffries. Mullen. Jeffries. Murphy. Johnson. Nadler. Jeffries. Napolitano. Jeffries. Neal. Jeffries. Neguse. Jeffries. Nels. Johnson. Newhouse. Johnson. Nickel. Jeffries. Norcross. Jeffries. Norman. Johnson. Nunn of Iowa.
Miracle Mike.
Johnson. Obernolte. Johnson. Ocasio-Cortez. Jeffries. Ogles. Johnson. Omar. Jeffries. Owens. Johnson. Pallone. Jeffries. Palmer. Johnson. Panetta. Jeffries. Pappas. Jeffries. Pasquale. Jeffries. Payne.
Gentleman from New York, Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Pelosi.
As one who knows and respects the role of Speaker, Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Peltola. Jeffries. Pence. Johnson. Perez. Jeffries. Perry. Johnson. Peters. Jeffries. Pedersen. Jeffries. Pfluger. Johnson. Phillips. Jeffries. Pingree. Jeffries. Pocan. Jeffries. Porter. Jeffries. Posey. Johnson. Presley. Jeffries. Quigley. Jeffries. Ramirez.
Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Raskin. Jeffries. Reschenthaler. Johnson. Rogers of Washington. Johnson. Rogers of Alabama. Johnson. Rogers of Kentucky. Johnson. Rose. Johnson. Rosendale. Johnson. Ross. Jeffries. Rouser. Johnson. Roy. Johnson. Ruiz. Jeffries. Rupersberger. Jeffries. Rutherford.
The very honorable Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Ryan. Jeffries. Salazar. Johnson. Salinas. Jeffries. Sanchez. Jeffries. Santos. Johnson. Sarbanes. Jeffries. Scalise.
Great state of Louisiana, Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Scanlon. Jeffries. Schakowsky. Jeffries. Schiff. Jeffries. Snyder. Jeffries. Skolton. Jeffries. Schreier. Jeffries. Swikert. Johnson. Austin Scott. Johnson. David Scott. Jeffries. Scott of Virginia. Jeffries. Self. Johnson. Sessions. Johnson. Sewell. Jeffries. Sherman. Jeffries. Sherrill. Jeffries. Simpson. Johnson. Slotkin. Jeffries. Smith of Missouri. Johnson. Smith of Nebraska. Johnson. Smith of New Jersey. Johnson. Smith of Washington. Jeffries. Smucker. Johnson. Sorensen. Jeffries. Soto. Jeffries. Spanberger. Jeffries. Sparts. Johnson. Stensbury. Jeffries. Stanton. Jeffries. Stauber. Johnson. Steele. Johnson. Stefanik. Johnson. Style. Johnson. Stubbe. Johnson. Stevens. Jeffries. Strickland.
For the protection of voting rights, Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Strong. Johnson. Swalwell. Jeffries. Sykes. Jeffries. Takano. Jeffries. Tenney.
The Honorable Mike Johnson of Louisiana.
Johnson. Tanadar. Jeffries. Thompson of California. Jeffries. Thompson of Mississippi. Jeffries. Thompson of Pennsylvania. Johnson. Tiffany. Johnson. Timmons. Johnson. Titus. Jeffries. Tlaib. Jeffries. Takuda. Jeffries. Tonko. Jeffries. Torres of California. Jeffries. Torres of New York. Jeffries. Trahan. Jeffries. Trone. Jeffries. Turner. Johnson. Underwood. Jeffries. Valadeo. Johnson. Van Drew.
We are back better than ever. Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Van Dyne. Johnson. Van Orden. Van Orden. Vargas. Jeffries. Vasquez. Jeffries. Vesey. Jeffries. Velasquez. Jeffries. Wagner. Johnson. Wahlberg. Johnson. Waltz. Johnson. Wasserman Schultz. Jeffries. Waters.
He supports freedom of choice. Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Watson Coleman.
As the only candidate who represents the integrity of this House,
Watson Coleman.
again, do I need to say Hakeem Jeffries again because I read?
Jeffries.
The House will come to order. The clerk, the staff, and the tellers deserve to have the attention of the House. The clerk will continue.
Weber of Texas. Johnson. Webster of Florida. Johnson. Winstrup. Johnson. Westerman. Johnson. Wexton. Jeffries. Wild. Jeffries. Williams of Georgia.
Fulton County, Georgia, votes for Hakeem Jeffries.
Jeffries. Williams of New York. Johnson. Williams of Texas. Johnson. Wilson of Florida. Wilson of Florida. Jeffries. Wilson of South Carolina. Johnson. Whitman. Johnson. Womack.
With the 217th pick in the race for Speaker in the 3rd District of Arkansas, selects Mike Johnson.
Johnson. Yacom. Johnson. Zinke.
The next speaker of the People's House.
Johnson.
The clerk will now call the names of the members who did not answer the first call of the roll.
Byer. Jeffries. Boyle of Pennsylvania. Boyle of Pennsylvania. Correa. Correa. Gallego. Jeffries. Vicente Gonzalez. Vicente Gonzalez. Van Orden. Van Orden.
If there are any members who did not answer the call of the roll, they may come to the well and vote at this time. In their tallies that the total number of votes cast is 429, of which the Honorable Mike Johnson of the state of Louisiana has received 220 votes. And the Honorable Hakeem Jeffries of the state of New York has received 209 votes. Therefore, the Honorable Mike Johnson of the state of Louisiana, having received a majority of the votes cast, is duly elected Speaker of the House of Representatives for the 118th Congress. The chair appoints the following committee to escort the Speaker-elect to the chair: The gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Scalise. The gentleman from Minnesota, Mr. Emmer. The gentlewoman from New York, Ms. Stefanik. The gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. Hudson. The gentleman from Alabama, Mr. Palmer. The gentlewoman from Michigan, Mrs. McLean. The gentleman from California, Mr. McCarthy. The gentleman from Florida, Mr. Donalds. The gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Hearn. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Bergman. The gentlewoman from Washington, Mrs. Rogers. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Arrington. The gentleman from Texas, Mr. Fallon. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Molinaro. The gentlewoman from Florida, Mrs. Comack. The gentleman from New York, Mr. Jeffries. The gentlewoman from Massachusetts, Ms. Clark. The gentleman from California, Mr. Aguilar. The gentleman from California, Mr. Liu. The gentlewoman from Washington, Ms. Delbene. The gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Clyburn. The gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Neguse. The gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Escobar. The gentlewoman from Illinois, Ms. Underwood. The gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Wasserman Schultz. The gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Kildee. The gentlewoman from California, Ms. Jacobs. The gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Crockett. And the members of the Louisiana delegation, Mr. Graves, Mr. Higgins, Ms. Letlow, Mr. Carter. The committee will retire from the chamber to escort the Speaker-elect to the chair. The House will come to order. Sergeant of Arms.
Mr. Speaker, the Speaker-elect Mike Johnson from the state of Louisiana.
The House will come to order.
Speaker Mike Johnson, Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, Whip Clark, Chairman Aguilar, all of my colleagues in government on both sides of the aisle, it's an honor and a privilege to once again stand before you as House Democratic leader. From the very beginning of this Congress, House Democrats have made clear that we will find bipartisan common ground with our Republican colleagues whenever and wherever possible, for the good of the American people. And House Democrats have repeatedly done just that. It was House Democrats who provided a majority of the votes necessary to avoid a catastrophic default on our debt that would have crashed the U.S. economy and triggered a job-killing recession. It was House Democrats who provided a majority of the votes necessary to avoid a government shutdown that would have hurt everyday American. It was House Democrats who provided a majority of the votes necessary to secure $16 billion in disaster assistance for Americans whose lives have been devastated by extreme weather events. From the very beginning of this Congress, House Democrats have been governing for the people. We continue to look forward to finding bipartisan common ground whenever and wherever possible. House Democrats will continue to partner with President Biden and Senate Democrats to put people over politics. House Democrats will continue to fight for lower costs, better paying jobs, safer communities, and to build an economy from the middle out and the bottom up and not the top down. House Democrats will continue to push back against extremism in this chamber and throughout the country. House Democrats will continue to protect Social Security, protect Medicare, protect Medicaid, protect our children, protect our climate, protect low-income families, protect working families, protect the middle class, protect organized labor, protect the LGBTQ community, protect our veterans, protect older Americans, protect the Affordable Care Act, protect the right to vote, protect the peaceful transfer of power, protect our democracy, and protect a woman's freedom to make her own reproductive health care decisions. These are blue lines in the sand, and we will work hard to make sure that they are never crossed. We must also continue to stand by President Biden as he works to bring American hostages and Israeli hostages held by Hamas back home. American hostages and Israeli hostages and international hostages back home. We must also stand by our friends on the international stage. And we have no better friend in the Middle East than the State of Israel. Israel has a right to exist as a Jewish and democratic state. The special relationship between the United States and Israel is unbreakable. Our commitment to Israel's security is ironclad, and Israel has a right to defend itself under the international rules of war against the brutal terror unleashed on its citizens by Hamas. Our ironclad commitment to Israel's security and the effort to defeat Hamas is not inconsistent with the goal of achieving a lasting and just peace between Israel and the Palestinian people. In many ways, it is a necessary ingredient because Hamas is not good for Israel. Hamas is not good for America. Hamas is not good for the free world. Hamas is not good for the democratic aspirations of the Palestinian people. We must also support Ukraine in its courageous effort to defeat Russian aggression. There are only two paths in front of us. We can either stand up for Ukraine or bow down to Vladimir Putin. That is not a difficult choice. We must stand up for America's national security. We must stand up for democracy. We must stand up for freedom. We must stand up for truth. We must stand up for the Ukrainian people until victory is won. It is my expectation that in the next week or so, the Senate will send over for consideration a bipartisan national security funding package for Israel, Ukraine, and our other allies throughout the free world. That also includes humanitarian assistance for Palestinian civilians and others who may be in harm's way. The House of Representatives should take up this national security package and humanitarian relief package immediately, in totality, and without delay. The time for gamesmanship is over. The time for brinksmanship is over. The time for partisanship is over. It's time to get back to doing the business of the American people. Let me conclude. Let me conclude with an observation about the state of our democracy. Joe Biden won the 2020 presidential election. He's doing a great job under difficult circumstances, and no amount of election denialism will ever change that reality. Not now, not ever. Throughout the years, presidents from Ronald Reagan to Barack Obama, Dwight Eisenhower to Lyndon Baines Johnson have spoken to this chamber and urged us to put aside partisan politics for the good of the American people. President Lincoln spoke to this Congress on December 1st, 1862, in the middle of the Civil War, and noted that we in this institution had the power and bore the responsibility to save the Union. The stakes were high. As articulated by President Lincoln, we could either nobly save or meanly lose America as we know it, the last best hope on earth. This is a turbulent time in the American journey, and we have but one charge to keep during this moment of great fragility. Our union must be sustained. Our union must be strengthened. Our union must succeed. There are many throughout this country who are understandably alarmed at the turbulence of the moment, at the chaos, the dysfunction, and the extremism that has been unleashed in this chamber from the very beginning of this Congress. But this too shall pass. Our country has often confronted adversity, and the good news is we always find a way to make it to the other side. We faced adversity in the 1860s, in the middle of the Civil War, when the country was literally tearing itself apart. We faced adversity in October of 1929, when the stock market collapsed, plunging us into a Great Depression. We faced adversity in December of 1941, when a foreign power unexpectedly struck, plunging us into a world war with the evil empire of Nazi Germany. We faced adversity in the Deep South in the 1950s and 60s, when the country was struggling to reconcile the inherent contradictions between Jim Crow segregation and the glorious promises of the Constitution. We faced adversity on September 11th, 2001, when the towers and the Pentagon were unexpectedly struck, killing thousands of lives in an instant. We faced adversity right here in the House of Representatives when on January 6, 2021, a violent mob of insurrectionists, incited by some in this chamber, overran the House floor as part of an effort to halt the peaceful transfer of power. Every time we faced adversity, the good news here in America is that we always overcome. That is the power of American exceptionalism. That is why America is the land of the free and the home of the brave. That is why I remain optimistic about the future of this country. That is why America is the last best hope on earth. God bless you. God bless the House of Representatives. God bless the United States of America. It is now my solemn honor and responsibility to hand over the People's Gavel here in the United States House of Representatives to a family man, a hardworking man, a Baptist man, a Southern man, a son of a firefighter's household, the gentleman from the great state of Louisiana, and the 56th Speaker of the United States House of Representatives, the Honorable Mike Johnson.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all. First, a few words of gratitude. I want to thank Leader Jeffries. I do look forward to working with you on behalf of the American people. I know we see things from very different points of view, but I know that in your heart you love and care about this country and you want to do what's right. And so we're going to find common ground there, all right? I want to express my great thanks for our Speaker Emeritus, Kevin McCarthy. Kevin has dedicated over 2 decades of his life to selfless public service, 16 of those years in this House. And you would be hard-pressed to find anybody who loves this institution more or has contributed more to it. He is the reason we're in this majority today. His impact can never be overstated, and I want to thank him for his leadership, his friendship, and the selfless sacrifice that you and Judy have made for so many years. You helped build it, Kevin, and we owe you a great debt of gratitude. I want to thank the dedicated and overworked staff of this beleaguered House. They accept praise so stoically. But Miss Susan Cole, our House reading clerk, and yes. Listen, all the clerks and all the staff, you know, they're terribly overworked. This has been a grueling process, but they have served an integral role in keeping our republic, and we thank them for that service. I know we all do.
I want to thank my dedicated wife of almost 25 years, Kelly. She's not here. We couldn't get a flight in time. This happened sort of suddenly. But we're going to celebrate soon. She spent the last couple of weeks on her knees in prayer to the Lord, and she's a little worn out. We all are. I want to thank our children, Michael and Hannah and Abby and Jack and Will. All of our children sacrifice. All of them do, and we know that. And there's not a lot of perks to being a member of Congress's kid, right? And so I want to thank all of your families as well for what they endure and what they've had to endure for the last few weeks. We've been here a while. Yeah. I want to thank my faithful mother, Jeannie Johnson, who bore me at the age of 17, and my brothers Chris and Josh, and my sister Laura, and all their families, and all of our extended family. In Louisiana, family's a big deal, and we got a bunch of them. I especially want to thank all the extraordinary people of the great state of Louisiana. We have never had a Speaker of the House hail from our state, and so they've been lifting us up. I thank the people of Louisiana for the opportunity to serve you in Congress, and I'm humbled by your continuous support. We will make you proud. To my colleagues, I want to thank you all for the trust that you have instilled in me to lead us in this historic and unprecedented moment that we're in. The challenge before us is great, but the time for action is now, and I will not let you down. I want to say to the American people, on behalf of all of us here, we hear you. We know the challenges you're facing. We know that there's a lot going on in our country, domestically and abroad, and we are ready to get to work again to solve those problems, and we will. Our mission here is to serve you well, to restore the people's faith in this House, in this great and essential institution. My dad, it was mentioned, my dad was a firefighter. He was an assistant chief in the fire department in my hometown of Shreveport, Louisiana, a little town in northwest Louisiana. On September 17, 1984, when I was 12 years old, he was critically burned and permanently disabled in the line of duty. All I ever wanted to be when I grew up was the chief of the fire department in Shreveport. But after the explosion on that fateful day, he nearly died, and it was a long road back, and it's changed all of our life trajectories. I'm the oldest of 4 kids. And my dad, he lived with pain all the rest of his life for decades more. And I lost my dad to cancer 3 days before I got elected to Congress, 3 days. And he wanted to be there at my election night so badly. I'm the first college graduate in my family. This was a big deal to him. And so it was several weeks after that. It was early 2017. It was my freshman term, and it fell to me to be in the rostrum one night to serve here as Speaker Pro Tem. I thought that was a big deal until I figured out that's what you do for freshmen late at night. And I think if my memory serves, Miss Jackson Lee was winding down one of her long, eloquent speeches. And not that I was not enraptured by her speech, but I looked up at the top of the chamber there, and I saw the face of Moses staring down. And I just felt in that moment the weight of this place, right? The history that is revered here and the future that we are called to forge. And I really was just kind of almost overwhelmed with emotion. It occurred to me in that moment, it had been several weeks, and I had not had an opportunity yet to grieve my dad's passing, and I just had this sense that somehow he knew. And I had tears come to my eyes, and I was standing here, and I'm wiping them away, and then it suddenly occurs to me, the late-night C-SPAN viewers are going to think something's very wrong with the new young congressman from Louisiana. It wasn't Sheila's speech. I'm sorry. I just knew in that moment that my dad, my father, would be proud of me, and I felt that he was. And I think all of our parents are proud of what we're called to do here. I think all the American people at one time had great pride in this institution, but right now, that's in jeopardy. And we have a challenge before us right now to rebuild and restore that trust. This is a beautiful country. It's the beauty of America that allows a firefighter's kid like me to come here and serve in this sacred chamber where great men and women have served before all of us and strive together to build and then preserve what Lincoln did refer to as the last best hope of man on earth. We stand at a very dangerous time. I'm stating the obvious. We all know that. The world is in turmoil. But a strong America is good for the entire world. We are the beacon of freedom, and we must preserve this grand experiment in self-governance. It still is. We're only 247 years into this grand experiment. We don't know how long it will last, but we do know that the founders told us to take good care of it. I want to tell all my colleagues here what I told the Republicans in that room last night. I don't believe there are any coincidences in a matter like this. I believe that Scripture, the Bible, is very clear. That God is the one that raises up those in authority. He raised up each of you, all of us. And I believe that God has ordained and allowed each one of us to be brought here for this specific moment in this time. This is my belief. I believe that each one of us has a huge responsibility today to use the gifts that God has given us to serve the extraordinary people of this great country, and they deserve it, and to ensure that our republic remains standing as the great beacon of light and hope and freedom in a world that desperately needs it. It was in 1962 that our national motto, "In God We Trust," was adorned above this rostrum. And if you look at the little guide that they give tourists and constituents who come and visit the house, if you turn in there to about page 14 in the middle of that guide, it tells you the history of this. And it says very simply, these words were placed here above us. This motto was placed here as a rebuke of the Cold War era philosophy of the Soviet Union. That philosophy was Marxism and communism, which begins with the premise that there is no God. This is a critical distinction that is also articulated in our nation's birth certificate. We know the language well, the famous second paragraph, that we used to have children memorize in school, and they don't do that so often anymore, but they should. G.K. Chesterton was the famous British philosopher and statesman, and he said one time, "America is the only nation in the world that is founded upon a creed." And he said it's listed with almost theological lucidity in the Declaration of Independence. What is our creed? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, not born equal, created equal. And they are endowed by the same inalienable rights, with the same inalienable rights: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness. That is the creed that has animated our nation since its founding, that has made us the great nation that we are. And we're in a time of extraordinary crisis right now. And the world needs us to be strong. They need us to remember our creed and our admonition. Turmoil and violence have rocked the Middle East and Eastern Europe. We all know it. And tensions continue to build in the Indo-Pacific. The country demands strong leadership of this body, and we must not waver. Our nation's greatest ally in the Middle East is under attack. The first bill that I'm going to bring to this floor in just a little while will be in support of our dear friend Israel, and we're overdue in getting that done. We're going to show not only Israel, but the entire world, that the barbarism of Hamas that we have all seen play out on our television screens is wretched and wrong, and we are going to stand for the good in that conflict. We have a catastrophe at our southern border. The Senate and the White House can no longer ignore the problem. From Texas to New York, wave after wave of illegal migrants are stressing our communities to their breaking points. We know that our streets are being flooded with fentanyl, and all of our communities, children, and even adults are dying from it. The status quo is unacceptable. Inaction is unacceptable, and we must come together and address the broken border. We have to do it. The skyrocketing cost of living is unsustainable, and Americans should not have to worry about how they're going to feed their family every week because they can't afford their groceries anymore. Everybody in this room should think about this. Here's the stats. Prices have increased over 17% in the last 2 years. Credit card interest rates are at the highest level in nearly 3 decades, and mortgage rates are now at a peak we haven't seen since 2001. We have to bring relief to the American people by reining in federal spending and bringing down inflation. The greatest threat to our national security is our nation's debt. And while we've been sitting in this room, that's right, the debt has crossed almost $33.6 trillion. In the time that it's going to take me to deliver this speech, we'll go up another $20 million in debt. It's unsustainable. We have to get the country back on track. Now, we know this is not going to be an easy task, and tough decisions will have to be made. But the consequences, if we don't act now, are unbearable. We have a duty to the American people to explain this to them so they understand it well, and we are going to establish a bipartisan debt commission to begin working on this crisis immediately. We all know that we also live in a time of bitter partisanship. It was noted. And it's been on display here today, right? When our people are losing their faith in government, when they're losing sight of the principles that made us the greatest nation in the history of the world, I think we got to be mindful of that. We're going to fight. We're going to fight vigorously over our core principles because they're at odds a lot of times now in this modern era. We have to sacrifice sometimes our preferences because that's what's necessary in a legislative body. But we will defend our core principles to the end. In his farewell address, thank you. In his farewell address, President Reagan explained the secret of his rapport with people. And I like to paraphrase his explanation all the time. He said, you know, they call me the great communicator, but I really wasn't that. He said, I was just communicating great things. And they're the same great things that have guided our nation since its founding. What are those great things? I call them the 7 core principles of American conservatism, but let me concede to you all, I think it's really quintessentially the core principles of our nation. I boil them down to individual freedom, limited government, the rule of law, peace through strength, fiscal responsibility, free markets, and human dignity. Those are the foundations that made us the extraordinary nation that we are. And you and I today are the stewards of those principles. The things that have made us the freest, most powerful, most successful nation in the history of the world. The things that have made us truly exceptional. In this time of great crisis, it is our duty to work together, as previous generations of great leaders have, to face these great challenges and solve these great problems. I will conclude with this. The job of the Speaker of the House is to serve the whole body, and I will. But I've made a commitment to my colleagues here that this Speaker's office is going to be known for decentralizing the power here. My office is going to be known for members being more involved and having more influence in our processes and all the major decisions that are made here, for predictable processes and regular order. We owe that to the people. That's right. And I want to make this commitment to you, to my colleagues here and on the other side of the aisle as well. My office is going to be known for trust and transparency and accountability, for good stewardship of the people's treasure, for the honesty and integrity that is incumbent upon us, all of us, here in the People's House. Our system of government is not a perfect system. It's got a lot of challenges, but it is still the best one in the world, and we have an opportunity to preserve it. Last thing I'm going to say is a message to the rest of the world. They have been watching this drama play out for a few weeks. We've learned a lot of lessons, but you know what? Through adversity, it makes you stronger. And we want our allies around the world to know that this body of lawmakers is reporting again to our duty stations Let the enemies of freedom around the world hear us loud and clear. The People's House is back in business. Thank you. Thank you. We will do our duty here. We will serve you well. We will govern well, and we'll make you proud in this institution again. We're going to fight every day to make sure that is true. I look forward to the days ahead. I genuinely believe in my heart that the best days of America are still ahead of us. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. Thank you. Thank you. I'm now ready to take the oath of office, and I ask the Dean of the House of Representatives, the Honorable Harold Rogers of Kentucky, to please administer the oath of office.
Mr. Speaker Designee, congratulations on your election.
Thank you, sir.
When our founding fathers chose a bold, new, and innovative new self-rule government, it was met by deep skepticism by the world's monarchs. They said self-rule is only a dream. Our founders said they're right. It's the American dream.
Amen.
Now it's our dream. We're in charge. The speakership of the United States House of Representatives is the crucial outpost for the well-being of the people's government, the keeper, if you will, of the dream. Sir, if you wish to assume this awesome responsibility, please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear that you will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that you will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that you take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that you will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which you are about to enter. So help you God?
I do, so help me God.
Congratulations, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you. You get the next. Would y'all like to get right into governing? For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, that is a nice ring to it, by the way. Mr. Speaker, I offer a privilege resolution to notify the Senate of the election of Mike Johnson as Speaker of the House of Representatives and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Resolution 810. Resolve that a message be sent to the Senate to inform that body that Mike Johnson, a representative from the state of Louisiana, has been elected Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Without objection, the resolution is agreed to, and the motion to consider is laid on the table. For what purpose does the gentleman from Louisiana seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, to notify President Biden of the election of Mike Johnson as Speaker of the House, I offer a privilege resolution and ask for its immediate consideration.
The clerk will report the resolution.
House Resolution 811. Resolve that the clerk be instructed to inform the President of the United States that the House of Representatives has elected Mike Johnson, a representative from the state of Louisiana, Speaker of the House of Representatives.
Without objection, the resolution is agreed to, and the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Thank you. All right. The chair would take this occasion to note that the Speaker's announced policies with respect to particular aspects of the legislative process placed in the record on January 9, 2023 will continue in effect for the remainder of the 118th Congress. The chair announces that the Speaker has delivered to the clerk a letter dated October 25, 2023, listing members in the order in which each shall act as Speaker pro tempore under Clause 8B3 of Rule 1. The chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable, the Speaker, House of Representatives. I hereby designate Representative Steve Scalise to exercise any authority regarding assembly, reassembly, convening, or reconvening of the House pursuant to House Concurrent Resolution 1, Clause 12 of Rule 1, and any concurrent resolution of the concurrent Congress as may contemplate my designation of members to exercise similar authority. In the event of the death or inability of that designee, the alternate members of the House listed in the letter bearing this date that I have placed with the clerk are designated in turn for the same purpose. Signed sincerely, Mike Johnson, Speaker.
The chair lays before the House a communication.
The Honorable Kevin F. McCumber, Clerk of the House, Washington, D.C. Mr. Clerk, I hereby appoint the Honorable Patrick McHenry, the Honorable Adrian Smith, the Honorable Andy Harris, the Honorable Guy Reschenthaler, the Honorable Rob Whitman, the Honorable Ben Klein, the Honorable Richard Hudson, and the Honorable John Joyce to act as Speaker pro tempore to sign and roll bills and joint resolutions through the remainder of the 118th Congress. Signed sincerely, Mike Johnson, Speaker.
Without objection, the appointments are approved, and the House will be in recess subject to a call of chair pursuant to Clause 12A of Rule 1. We'll be back soon. Nothing. Yep. There we go.
no, they said the Rayburn room is where they were meeting.
Well, then they
moved
shifted
it.
I'm just telling you what they told me just 3 minutes ago.
Yeah.
They said go to the Rayburn room.
They told me twice go to the Rayburn room, and then they said, by the way, no, go to these steps. So,
Yeah.
Well, we have the best looking faces over here, so
Yeah.
great looking mugs. Get them in the background.
maybe they were going to walk down together, but we got the best spots.
Maybe that's
Well, we gave you know, we're just popping up the top.
And if they don't get down here quick, we'll just take our turn. That's right.
So let's talk about it. I like the way that smells. You can stay close.
It's nice, isn't it?
It is. No, I
The little man.
So Andy texted me, he's like, get here, you know, so I ran back for him. I feel like a ping pong ball. But he's doing good. Yep.
Never ends.
He's so chill though, like unless you really hungry, he just makes it.
Adley was that.
And he's really
I just saw it on my.
Is Adam still chill?
Adley. She's our chillest child.
So yeah, I feel like the temper
I
is
think
good.
and then Drew screamed for the first 6 months.
Don't scare me with that.
They're all different.
No, he hasn't started that. He's not going to. No, he's so chill. I'm telling you, like unless even but like he doesn't. It's not crazy.
Well, Adley, the only time she really get upset is when first, like for the first maybe 6 weeks, she'd swaddle her. And Monica had to have C-section, so I got that
You had to do it,
responsibility.
yeah.
And you would think that I was stabbing her. She would blood curdling screams. And then she would realize, oh,
I like this. Yeah.
and then she would be out. I mean, it was like that for 6 weeks.
So I stopped putting his hands in because Henry rolls to his side. And then I was like, I'm afraid he's gonna smuggle stuff, but now he like puts his hands up, so he does like this like barrel of monkeys thing, where he like barrel of monkeys.
Drew, on the other hand, yelled when he was hungry, yelled when he was full,
He does, yeah.
yelled when he had a poop. I mean,
He's vocal.
it was something else. I mean, and he actually had a sensitivity to dairy at first. So Monica, we put a lot of milk and cheese in our house.
Yeah, that's how Henry is. He'll throw up if I have milk.
So
yeah.
he would be hungry and be upset, and he would eat. His stomach would hurt, so it was just non-stop.
Yeah, that's how. As long as I don't have, I can do ice cream or whatever. Like if I do straight up milk, he throws up.
And there's no allergies to that.
Yeah, just the way it breaks down.
13, 6 feet tall, and he's got down. It'll be.
In the history books.
Because they were telling people about
The 118 pounds.
the B-roll is a bunch of sweats. But
What is that? The flight of the bumblebees? I have a committee for you. I'm not able to stay. Which committee?
Oh yeah, but I have an introduction. I'm opening our marks. Yeah.
It got moved to tomorrow.
No, another one did. Our markup did. I don't think this is subcommittee. Energy minerals. Energy minerals.
Oh no, I'm watching.
I got water too, but yeah.
we're waiting on you. What are y'all doing? Waiting for you. You called a press conference, right?
Oh, we're going to Rayburn? No, we're going to go meet them. So we're meeting there and then walking out. Okay. Everyone go to, unless you all want to stay out here. Well, it's Thursday. Okay. Tell them before the welcoming committee.
I think like maybe 5 minutes.
By the time we get there, we come back.
This one is what you
We're already sweaty, so we don't want to look too scary.
I was like, I dressed for winter today. So.
You and me both. I'm like, yeah, thank you.
People were supposed to rally at Rayburn, but she said they'll be here in 5 minutes. By the time they walk up there, we're here. It's fine. Oh, Richard's here, so we can get started.
Oh, good. I'll go ahead and kick it off.
Kick this off.
I got a few things to get off my chest.
Okay.
All right. Let's open mic.
But don't name names. Don't burn bridges.
You say my colleagues, or with an X.
I'll go ahead. You come in. What I do.
Well, my highlight today was this speaker and waiting. Keep waiting. I got that deep voice in there. Aguilar was laughing at me. Got it. Keep waiting. literally is.
I need to do slow-mo filming before
That's
all
right.
time.
Yeah. It tastes kind of like Campbell. Yeah, it's all right. Well, you even walk down and dramatic. You wouldn't want it.
But you can have the rain. So you have to get the rain man.
Have to be slow. Black light can be admired all the way down. Oh, did it?
It's kind of like a light hop. When you
Check that out.
It's not easy.
What, 32 years of Copenhagen down the drain.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah, just stay here. Not like I'm talking. So we got
Right, but I mean, I imagine that the chairman's gonna.
This is just nicotine flavor. But let's talk about Copenhagen. 32 years of Copenhagen. Just wait. Later. 2 years. 2 years left on it.
Okay, really excited for this, but I'm gonna go.
Not a fan.
Okay, we'll be here. Okay. We Oh, okay. Well, we'll do that.
That's all good. We're just talking about babies and diapers.
Yeah.
It's all good.
It's not too sporty, but thank you. Hot mic. We want to avoid hot mics. Can they hear us?
Just you.
Just me.
Or did somebody plug this?
No.
Always assume
No,
that
they're
it's hot.
making they're all walking
So I guess
out.
you're all wondering why I invited you here.
For sure. 5 of us are going to do a motion vacation here.
We just don't want to get back.
Too soon. Too soon.
We're not gonna bring that up.
It's been 15
MTV
minutes. He
report.
hasn't upheld it. National debt's going
That's
up $20 million since
he was transparent who his speaker pro tem is going to be. No one else
Very
knows.
transparent.
I
That
actually thought about vacating when you put my name on the list.
You know what? I wouldn't have blamed you on that one.
Luckily, I was going to afford it.
So there's gonna be a barbecue in Louisiana, staging cooking for the
That should be every
celebration or
week.
something.
Yeah,
I'm on
should.
Friday
I
after
gotta say
before
hey
the.
to one of my buddies.
Okay.
Yeah, there should be a...
Be careful, Corey.
Oh, I'm not worried. I've got to say your house.
No. Is he bothering you? Is he bothering you?
He's wild. We don't watch him.
I'm a decent guy. I didn't say a good guy. I said decent guy.
What is Grothman? Grothman!
He's lost.
You guys go get Grothman. Grothman.
Go.
Palmer!
I got a meeting at
They can wait. You're the chairman. Oh yeah, they just turned his subpoenas back on. He's got to go to work.
Hey, you got the subpoenas turned back on now.
Yeah, what?
So you got the subpoenas turned back on.
I know. Hey, and they're fixing to go out.
Send you them.
No, it's just for me. I hate arriving before you
I do too. My co-instructor was like, come out there. No, we're hot.
It's nice in the sun.
It's all right. It's not.
I ran out mid. Sorry, it's my blazer. I don't wear the jacket that I look like a loser. I'm actually very excited to go to this picture. I'm like very excited.
Chopper. Just wanted to go back to the shirt and skin.
I like that you didn't take any jabs.
Yeah, it's good. Classic.
Very classic. As you should. You know, a historical fact that just got given to me is that he's the first person since Boehner that ever voted.
Probably wondering why all African gamers
Keep your seats. They knew you were coming.
They told us a little preemptively. Yeah, they made us sit out here and warm them up for you guys.
Yeah, I'm going to get him.
Make sure you make room for
Steve.
Oh, here he is.
Right here.
I guess. I don't even know what to do. I got to smile.
Oh, I didn't know that.
He's down here. Make room for Steve down here.
Oh, you got a space for him.
He
possibly got a space.
No man left behind. Emma went to a press conference. Or a meeting.
Boss.
Ready?
Double LA, baby.
On behalf of the House Republican Conference, we are unified and so proud to have elected Mike Johnson as Speaker of the People's House. As many of you heard and the American people heard, I meant every word that I said on the House floor. I've had the opportunity to work with Mike Johnson as Vice Chair, and I was so humbled and honored to nominate him. Mike epitomizes servant leadership. He is humble, but he is strong. He is well respected, not only across this conference, but across this great nation. And we know the stakes. We know that we were sent here on behalf of the American people to serve as their voice, to stand up for them, to push back on the failed far-left agenda of single-party Democrat rule led by Joe Biden. So we are here unified in strength to reopen the People's House, and I'm so excited to turn it over to my colleague, Tom Emmer from Minnesota, our whip.
Thank you, Elise. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for bearing with us. I know it's been a long few weeks. From an outside point of view, these last few weeks probably look like total chaos, confusion, no end in sight. But from my perspective, this is one of the greatest experiences in the recent history of our republic. While speakers' races for the last 100 years have been conducted behind closed doors, filled with political promises and tyrannical threats against anyone who would not fall in line, the speakers' races under our House Republican majority have been open, honest, transparent, and a true display of what democracy looks like in action. It took a while for us to get here, but our conference has shown that we achieved tremendous success when we worked together as a team. And I couldn't be more proud to be part of this team with our new Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, leading the way. Mike is a strong man of faith, a constitutional conservative, and a fierce fighter for our Republican common sense agenda. He has been a leading force on the Judiciary Committee, where he has defended Americans' individual liberties while fighting back against the Democrats' radical agenda and the Biden family's culture of corruption. He has been an important leader in our conference for nearly 3 years as vice chairman. And as speaker, I know Mike will keep our majority united as we continue to deliver on the commitments we've made to our constituents. We've had some challenging times around here these last few weeks, but our country has endured challenging times before. And I have zero doubt that we will again. Not only will we survive, we're going to come out stronger and better because of it. And the American people can be rest assured that with Speaker Mike Johnson at the helm, our House Republican majority will keep fighting to unapologetically stand with Israel, rein in Washington's reckless spending, secure our border, and force the Biden White House and Schumer Senate along with us as we govern. If these last few weeks have proven anything, it's that we will never stop fighting. We will never give up. And I firmly believe that with House Republicans now united and ready to get back to work, as our new Speaker-elect said, our best days lie ahead. And with that, I'm going to introduce the other legend from Louisiana, our Majority Leader, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Whip. Well, this is a great day. This is a day that's been coming for a long time. You know, if you think about what's happened these last 3 weeks, while a lot of people outside of Washington talk about dysfunction, this great group of men and women behind me have been talking about how to fix what's broken in Washington. And hasn't that discussion been coming for way too long? That's what this last 3 weeks has been about. That's what we have been struggling through. That's what we've been working towards, and we resolved it today by electing Mike Johnson as our next speaker. And what Mike laid out was a vision. It wasn't just core principles that he talked about today on the House floor so eloquently, but a vision for how we get not just the House back operating, but how we get Washington working better, how we fix this broken institution, and how symbolic. Mike talked in the House chamber about the symbolism of the House chamber, Moses, in God we trust, right above the Speaker's rostrum. So many other symbols, Washington, Lafayette, the history of some of the great battles, passing the 13th Amendment in that chamber. But if you look up at this Capitol dome that serves as a beacon to so many, not just here in America, but all around the world, interestingly, the last 3 weeks, the Statue of Freedom was covered in scaffolding. Just like we have been doing construction to fix this broken institution, how symbolic that the scaffolding is now coming down as we elected a new speaker to fix this institution that's had problems for decades, that needed to be addressed and went ignored for way too long. I have seen this man in action since I was a state representative. For those people that don't know Mike Johnson, maybe they're looking to Google, maybe they're looking to other places. But those of us who have known Mike Johnson for a long time, and I've known him maybe longer than most, I've seen a commitment, a self-service commitment to things bigger than himself, going back to my days in the State House and when he came to Congress. Those same principles followed him. His belief, his faith that drives him so deeply, that some actually mock him for. Those are the principles that make this country so great. Those are the principles that cause people who believe in freedom all around the world to look up at that Statue of Freedom as a beacon of hope for all around the world. And what Mike Johnson is going to do for us and our country, getting us back on track. We are just getting started, but people are going to come to know and love what he represents because he fights for things bigger than himself and people who have been ignored for way too long. It is my great privilege to introduce the 45th Speaker of the House, my dear friend, Mike Johnson, the Speaker.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Tom and Elise. This is an extraordinary team that has been assembled here to serve the American people. Steve Scalise represents so much in our home state of Louisiana. One of the things he truly represents is perseverance and hope. And as he was talking here just a moment ago, I was reminded of the scripture that says suffering produces perseverance, perseverance produces character, and character produces hope. What we need in this country is more hope. The people have lost their faith in our institutions. Their faith is at an all-time low. And one of the reasons they've lost it is because the Congress, over the years, has not delivered for the American people well enough. We're in the majority right now. We've gone through a little bit of suffering. We've gone through a little bit of character building. And you know what it's produced? More strength, more perseverance, and a lot of hope. And that's what we're about to deliver to the American people. We're going to speak with clarity and conviction and consistency to the American people. We're going to tell them what we're for, what agenda we are pursuing, and why it is best for every American, why it will give them more liberty, opportunity, and security. We're going to speak to that clearly. We're going to act consistently, and we're going to exhibit two things here, trust and teamwork. And this group will deliver for the American people. I said it in the chamber, and I will say it here. We're going to govern well. And I think the people are going to be very pleased with those results. We're so grateful, I'm so grateful and so humbled to have gotten a unanimous vote on the floor by all of my colleagues here. We went through a lot to get here, but we are ready to govern, and that will begin right away. You've all heard me talk a lot today, and I'm not going to belabor the point because the sun is bright and it's too warm for the fall. But I'll say this. We're going to dispense with all the usual ceremonies and celebrations that traditionally follow a new speakership because we have no time for either one. The American people's business is too urgent in this moment. The hour is late. The crisis is great. In America, we hear you. And we are reporting again, as I said in there, to our duty stations. That will begin in just a few moments. This entire group is going to go back to the House floor, and we are going to pass our resolution in support of the nation of Israel, our closest ally in the Middle East. You're going to see an aggressive schedule in the days and weeks ahead. You're going to see Congress working as hard as it's ever worked, and we are going to deliver for the American people. I'm grateful for this opportunity. I want to thank you for being patient with us, and I promise you it'll be worth it. God bless you. God bless you.